Well, to discuss this, we're joined by Emmanuel Dupuy, President for the Institute for European Perspective and Security. Welcome, sir, and thank you for taking the time.
So it's a pleasure.
So it's important that we're clear. Now, Le Pen's party is often referred to as far right as opposed to, say, centre right. What is it that her party's policies reflect that are far right policies? Can you give us some examples?
Well, the National Rally is often depicted as the continuation of the National Front, which was clearly an anti-migrant, an extreme right, a racist and xenophobe party. And by the way, at the period when the father of Marine Le Pen was the head of this party, clearly taking anti-Semitic posture. That is why it is characterized as, of course, being part of the national political landscape, but not being part of the Republican arc. The President Emmanuel Macron often refers to that, saying that there are some parties who belong to the arc républicain, the Republican arc going from left to right, from social democrats to Christian democrats, but excluding extreme left and extreme right. And I think if you would take a comparison, you have an example of parties who are considered to be extreme right in Europe, which may not be considered that way by their leaders. For example, Marine Le Pen went on air yesterday on CNN saying to Miss Amanpour, the journalist who was interrogating her, that she cannot be considered an extreme right or a fascist movement, and taking the comparison of the perception that you have in the United States, saying that she's in between the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. For example, in Italy, Giorgia Meloni never refers to her Fratelli d'Italia as being an extreme right party, but belonging to the centrodestra, the center-right party. And in Hungary, the Fidesz party is not considered by Viktor Orban as a ultra-conservative party, but being the continuation of a Christian Democrat party. So it's about the perception that you have. But to be, in a nutshell, we do consider in France, or the experts consider in France, that the policies that is fueling the ideology of the party, which is clearly interrogating the place of France inside the European Union. At one time, they were calling for a Frexit, and they no longer do have this narrative, that they are pro-Russian, or let's say philo-Russian, or closer to Russian than to Vladimir Putin's party, of course, and Vladimir Putin ideology, closer than any other political party in France. They are non-Atlantist or anti-Atlantist. They want France to have a more sovereign posture. And again, there is this migrant narrative, and Jordan Bardella was very clear, saying that if and when they come to power, one of the first decisions that will be taken is to withdraw the nationality of those who have who do not have two parents of French origin. This is called in French le droit du sol, and this is a very major outcome because a certain number of even the electors of Jordan Bardella and Marine Le Pen are very attached to what is the core of the, let's say, the integration model of France.
Understood. Okay, so you mentioned a number of perceptions. I'd like to come back to those later. But let's start with the policy of withdrawing the French nationality of anyone who doesn't have two parents with that nationality. Now, the thing is, her ideas or her party's ideas have got a lot of support, 33.1% of the votes cast in the first round. Now, how do you reconcile this? What is it that makes her party so popular amongst such a large number of French people?
I think that is the paradox. I think the voters, there are more than 7 million voters last week who have voted and casted their vote for national rally candidates, is not about the idea that they are fueling, but the perception that Marine Le Pen, Jordan Bardella, the National Rally are the most eager to oppose to Emmanuel Macron's policy. In other words, there is more detestation of Emmanuel Macron than there is a sort of convincing policies of Marine Le Pen. They have casted a lot, they have integrated a lot of votes, as the picture is shown, in the northern part of France, where the Communist Party used to be very strong, in very rural areas, as well as in very areas where workers, the working votes or the votes of the workers was eager to facilitate and to be linked to the rise of the Communist Party starting from mid-1950s. So I think people are considering that the National Rally is a solution to what all of the other parties have not been capable of assessing. A quest of a new way of making policy, a will to have a more democratic system. Emmanuel Macron has promised a lot of things, but has never committed almost on everything that he promised. And there is a huge fatigue and a huge sense of despair among the electors. This is why they want, said very simplistically, try to see if the National Rally would do elsewhere, would do in another way. So there's a will to say they have never been in power. They are the only political party which has never been in power. Let's try them and see if they can cope better with what is the major preoccupation of the French people,
right.
the economical attrition of each French citizen, and of course the ongoing increasing insecurity in France.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, this is one of the reasons, of course, that the Conservative Party and Rishi Sunak lost so badly. They weren't seen by the electorate as having kept their promises. I'd like to move on now to a situation where, for example, National Rally were to gain a majority or certainly a large influence in the French Parliament. How would that influence aid to Ukraine, if at all, in your opinion? Because they have recently distanced themselves from earlier statements which said that they wouldn't support Ukraine. Now they're saying that they would, and they won't interfere with French defence or foreign policy. Which do you think it'll be?
Well, first of all, Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella do not have the same position on Ukraine. Jordan Bardella was a member of the European Parliament. He has always voted reluctantly, but has finally, at the end of the day, as we say, voted for the humanitarian, diplomatic, and financial sustain to Ukraine. The last vote in the European Parliament, assessing the need to fuel the resilience of the Ukrainian people with the 50 billion of euros for the next 4 years, has been voted by Jordan Bardella himself. Marine Le Pen, a few hours ago, said she would sustain actively, this was her words, the resistance of the Ukrainians against a foreign aggression, not calling it a Russian aggression, by the way. So there has been a sort of change in the narrative. It's not the only change in the narrative of this political party. They no longer want to get out of Europe. They no longer want to rewrite the treaties. They no longer want to put in emphasis their differences amongst NATO countries. And of course, it's logical because they have the possibility to come to power, and therefore they have in sort of way eased their position on a certain number of subjects. To be very precise, Jordan Bardella made 3 points about the sustain and what would be his politics or his policy towards Ukraine. To continue and sustain politically, diplomatically, humanitarily, and financially Ukraine, but not pushing for the integration of Ukraine inside NATO. Giving the weapons that have been promised to Ukraine, at the exception of the weapons that could strike the Russian territory, which of course is a paradox since we have already given these weapons to Ukraine. And the third point, and this is exactly the narrative that you can find with Donald Trump and the Republican Party, to say that at one moment, or as Viktor Orban put it in his so-called unclear mission of peace that brought him to Moscow in the late hours, to have the position to bring everyone on the negotiation table. So it's very unclear, to be honest, what
Right.
would be in the final round the clear position.
Well, we shall certainly be keeping a close eye on that. Mr. Emmanuel Dupuy, President for the Institute for European Perspective and Security, thank you very much for taking the time to share your insights with our audience. Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you.